Well, g'day everyone. Recently I was just sent another bit of gear from Hollyland, and it's the Mars M1. I've worked with Hollyland on multiple occasions, and I always love their gear. It's always very high-ended, and it's always very, very well made. They asked me if I'd like to look at this one, and I was particularly interested in this because it's capable of having 4K put in. Now, normally you'll have two of these monitors if you wanted to connect them a certain way, and I'll explain that as I go along and I'll show you how that works. But you can also connect this to iPhones or iPads or something like that, and it's great because you could have your monitor could be, say, your client could be checking the footage as you're actually doing it, because the app that comes with this is really amazing. So what I thought we'd do is we'd unbox it, and then I'll sort of take you through what the specifications are of this, and then we'll have a look at how it's all set up and things like that. So let's get to the unboxing. Okay, so like I said, this is the Mars M1. It's a 5.5-inch monitor with built-in wireless transmitter and receiver. So it's quite interesting the way that they've designed these. But let's have a look. The box seems like it's really nice. After I've been used to Apple gear, it is really nice to see things packaged well. So inside there's a screen protector. I'm going to install this screen protector. And in here, you've got the actual unit itself, and it's still got the actual screen protection on there to stop it scratching. This is probably to load LUTs and things like that on it. So that's what that'd be used for, I would say. And then you've got a D-tap attachment. Now that's really good because I have got a D-tap battery coming. I have one in the studio actually, but I'm also getting another one sent to me as well that I'm going to review. So I'm looking forward to putting all this together. So having D-tap is great. Also inside this you get a instruction manual and you get a warranty card as well that's there. So let me just put this over here and we'll have a look at this unit as well. The first thing I can say, I love the size of this. Now some people might say, well, 5.5 inches is not large enough, but it actually is if you want to have this on camera. You don't want to go too big. I mean, I do use the Ninjas and they are a little bit bigger, but I think this is a really ideal size to have just on your camera. And remember, you can also be monitoring from your iPad or iPhone and things like that as well. This is amazing because normally these have really large antennas, so these are really small and they do just come off. Like that if you want to take them off, but they're that small you just leave them on and you would never bother about taking them off. At the top, I think this is just for a fan up here. These clips I think are if you want to put the sunscreen on. It does come with a sunscreen as well. There are your attachments on the side here, so you can mount this to different gear if you wanted to, say, do it that way, mount it onto tripods or things like that as well, or gimbals. There's also a headphone socket, which would be great if you're dealing with something like the A6400 because you'll be able to hear the audio coming out of there. There's also a USB here. And on this side here, we've got the HDMI out and the HDMI in. The other great thing about this too is that it also has SDI in as well. Now, nearly all the gear I use is SDI. Well, it is in my studio here. When I'm shooting like weddings and things like that, I'm using HDMI. But this is great to be able to also hook up SDI gear as well. And the other thing too here is you've got DCI in, that's 7 to 16 volt 2 amp, and you've got DCI out, and that's, I think it's 8.4 volts or 1 amp. Now you can put your Sony batteries in this, the MPF batteries as well, or like I said, you could also run D-tap type batteries if you want to make it last much, much longer. And there's just a power button which is over here. Nice screws the way this is locked down. It is a plastic material which keeps the weight down, but the build quality seems really nice. I mean, it does actually feel like it's a very well-made unit. So this is the website. I'll leave links for this so you can have a look at it. But just to give you some of the specifications that this has, this is wonderful because they're just now starting to get into 4K. It does do up to 4K 30 frames per second. So it won't do 4K 60, but it will do 4K 30. It's a 1000 nit monitor. It's a 5.5-inch touchscreen, and it's also, you can put your own 3D LUTs on there. I'm not sure whether there are LUTs. I'll have to check that in a minute. There might be some already installed. It is a transmitter and receiver all in one. So if you had two of these, one would be the transmitter and one would be the receiver. You can just swap them, so they're interchangeable, which is great because often you'll just get one transmitter and one receiver. So this can be for both. I will do a test on this distance to see how it works. I'm probably not going to take it anywhere near the limit. I'll just take it up to the point where I would use it in a wedding or something like that. So we'll give it a good test. It says it will do 450 feet. That's 150 meters. LOS range, and that's obviously line of sight. So if you do go behind trees or obstacles, you will lose it, but that's no different than anything else out there. So it is line of sight. It's saying that there's a 0.8 seconds low latency, and I'll do a latency test and we'll just see how that works. Disassembly free antenna. That's what I like about this. You can keep the antennas on this unit, which is really good because normally you do have to take them off. So just to show you how this bit works here, like I said, it is a TX and RX together, all in one. So you could have one TX and then other receivers if you wanted to. I'm not sure about the amount that you can attach, but it's showing two here. Also, it will work with all of your other Mars compatible wireless transmitters and receivers like the Mars 4K. The Mars 4K would be great to work with this. Then you could keep a 4K production workflow. The Mars 400S Pro and the Mars 300 Pro. I haven't got any of the Mars wireless receivers, so I'll just have to show it with my iPhone and the iPad. Hopefully it'll work with iOS 16. There may be an update that's needed, so I'll have to wait and see how that works. But it is great if you have these transmitters and receivers because you can work with this and it will be a great system to work with. Like I said, it is a 5.5-inch touchscreen with 1000 nits of brightness. Now, it is calibrated from the factory, so I believe it's calibrated right from the start. And they're saying it's calibrated during manufacture. A multiple level color temperature adjustments are available. So that's obviously in the system. We'll look at how you can control all of that. And it says the screen supports the Rec 709 color gamut for excellent color rendition. Now you can also have 5 selectable 3D LUTs, so that's great too. So you can put LUTs on there. I do use LUTs when I'm shooting S-Log. I use the Phantom LUTs. It just says here that it's using the Kalman color calibration, Rec 709, and it's got 16.7 million colors. Like I said before, the range will be 450 feet, 150 meters, and it's 0.8 seconds of low latency. This was one of the good things about this that I showed you before, that you've got your HDMI in and your HDMI out, so you can daisy chain this, which is really good. And then you've also got the SDI. I love having the ability to go SDI or HDMI. Like I said, most of my gear in the studio, all of it actually now is SDI, which is really good. Now it says here too that it has this smart channel scan and selection, so it will scan all the channels and it will pick the best channel or the strongest channel that's there. So that's a nice feature as well. Just to sort of mention this too, that the body does have this texture that you sort of see on it here that makes it nice to hold on to so it's not slippery. Now it just says here that the Mars M1 supports a wide range of DC power options, 7 volts to 16 volts, MPFF batteries, and batteries with the D-Tap interface. Now your optional accessories, you can get things like this rosewood handle, there's a wrist strap, you can buy spare antennas if you wanted to, and you can also get a spare glass protector as well. The monitor hood might be a good thing to get actually, and it also has a shoulder strap. I think being 1000 nits, so it's not the brightest out there in the marketplace, but it's good enough. But it will actually have to be shaded, I think. So it's probably a good idea if you can get the monitor hood as well. This is just your D-Tap to DC, and you can also get a storage case as well. I'll just take you through a couple of these specifications that's here. It does say here too that your headphone jack is a 3.5mm jack. If you want to update the firmware, it is through the USB Type-C, so that's nice and handy. The screen resolution, even though you can put 4K in and 4K out, it takes 1920 by 1080 pixels, so you're looking at HD on the screen. The pixel density is 403 pixels per inch, and the aspect ratio is 16:9. And like I said, the brightness is 1000 nits, and the contrast ratio is 1000 to 1 as well. Power consumption is 14.5 watts. That's without the DC output. And the net weight is 13.5 ounce, and that's 380 grams. That's without the antennas though. Now the operating frequency with this is 5.1 to 5.8 gigahertz. That's good because often it's only 2.8, so the 5.8 gigahertz is much better because it's not as saturated as the 2.8 gigahertz. The codec that this uses is H.264 as well, and the bit rate is 12 megabits per second, so they're very good specs. So what we'll do now, I'm going to put the screen protector on this, just so that it's protected right from the start, because otherwise I might scratch it. So I'll put that on, and then we'll have a look at the menu and see what that actually is like. Okay, so what I've got now, I'm using my A7S III, and it's connected by a HDMI to the monitor that you can see there. I call the girl Susie that's sitting in the background one of my models. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the interface now and show you how it works. So I'll change the exposure now so that it adjusts for that monitor that you can see there. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we'll look at the interface here. Now, if I click onto the monitor itself, you'll see that it shows the transmitter, and it's also showing what the channel number is here as well. And that's the actual strength of the signals that are available. You'll notice that it's showing here 4K HDMI. It says 4K 25p, so the 4K signal is going into this, which is great. You've got a battery indicator which is up here, and the other thing I'll show you before I start going through these menus is the setup menu that you click down here. This is where you can choose the channels manually if you like, or you can actually let it do it automatically. You can determine whether this unit is a transmitter or the receiver, and you can also pair it with other transmitters and receivers from the Hollyland ones that are available that are out there now. It also has a fan control as well. There's mute, which will turn the fan off, and there's auto. Now, I'll stand right next to it, and there's no fan on actually at the moment, so it's not even on. But when it does come on, you can hear it if you stand right next to it. It's sort of barely audible, but if you're about a meter back, you don't hear it at all. Display settings, this is where you change your brightness of your display. The volume is here as well. That will show that. If I turn that on, then you'll see the volume indicators will start to appear through here. So if I make it a bit louder, test. So you'll see that will happen there. Let me just turn that down a little bit. And then you can also show your language, which is English. Let me just come back. Device info will show you what your firmware version is as well. So it's device version down the bottom here. You get your serial number. There's a password, which is just a default. I'll change that so it connects properly. So no one can obviously connect to it. So I will change that. That's the name of the Wi-Fi that you'd actually connect to. You can reset the device down here as well if you wanted to do that. Now, the first thing I want to do is I've got my camera on log. So I have put some LUTs onto this. Now, they're actually sitting inside this little folder here. So if you go onto that, it automatically selects the LUT actually. So that's without the LUT. You can see it's flat. If I click on here, this is a phantom LUT. You can see then that it gains the contrast all back. Now, to import one, all you do is you just go import, put your USB drive into the side, and then you can just import it in. I've put one on F1, I've done one on F2, and you can see the LUTs change up the top, and there's also F3 as well. So I've got LUTs that are in there. So if you wanted to create any LUT or use whatever you like, you can just import up to 5 of them, which is really good. So I'm going to leave that LUT on. Now let's go through the interface now. So the first one we'll look at is over here. Now there is more than this. If you click on the arrow, it will go to others that are sort of hidden there. I'm going to click on the arrow to come back. Now the first one is your waveform. So you can see here that that's showing your waveform. Now I'm going to adjust this so you can see how it starts to increase. So that's how you can get your exposure perfect. I really do like using waveforms. I think they're the best way that you can expose for anything. I wish my Sony cameras had that. Now the interface is brilliant on this system. It's so smooth, and basically you just touch on it and you can do whatever you like. I've noticed a lot of other interfaces aren't as good as this. This monitor has been made by Hollyland, so they developed it themselves rather than outsourcing it, because apparently they weren't happy with the quality that they were getting from other manufacturers. So like I said, you can just move that to where you want to put it. If I click that off, you can then also go to your parade. Now your parade is a great way of getting skin tones, checking color balance, things like that. So again, you can just move that around to wherever you want that to go as well. The next one is your histogram. Again, you can see if I start to change my exposure that it will alter as well. So that's how that will work. I usually prefer to use the waveforms rather than the histogram, but the histogram's there if you wanted it as well. There's the zebras or zebras, we say here in Australia. You can determine how strong they are. I haven't sort of worked out yet what setting this has to be. I usually have certain settings that I'll use for S-Log, so I'm going to have to play around with it and see how those numbers correspond with that, but I'll do that at a later date. This is your focus peaking. Now at the moment it's set on red, and you can see that if I take this way out of focus, well, I'll show this first, that you can go red, yellow, green, blue, or white. Just throw the A7S out of focus and you'll see that the peaking has disappeared. As I bring it into focus, you can see the red lines there move across, so that means that it's in focus. So it's great that you've got that many points that you can, or that many colours that you can choose to get that right. This will also determine your strength. So if you bring it right down to 0, you can see it's quite strong. If you bring it right down to the other end, it's quite light. The next one along is using false color. This is terrific too, because you get like a guide on the side there that you can use. This is terrific to show what will be overexposed or underexposed. You can see as I move the exposure that this will change. And that's how you can determine your skin tones you want to be around there. But like I said, I've made this darker deliberately, lighter deliberately, so that you guys can see it as well. But this is a great way of working to get exposure. I love using that with the waveforms. It's really good to do that. The next one is if you just want to say view it in mono, the red channel, the blue channel, and the green channel, so green and blue. So that's how that works. This next one here is if you are changing your aspect ratio. The aspect mat is just the amount that shows on the outside and how strong it is. But that you can see if I switch through, it goes to 4:3. There's all these different ones, 5:4. I won't mention all of them, but you can see it just keeps changing it around. So they're great if you wanted to get or a more filmic, cinematic type look. The LUTs one we've already looked at, so let's just go to the next ones. This is how you can change the color temperature of your monitor. So I won't do that because I've already done that, but if you click through there, you can change the color temperature of your monitor. This resizing option is really good because you can move it around and then you can check focus critically. Like at the moment it's on 2 times, but you can also go up to 4 times, and you can see how accurate that this monitor actually is. It's very, very friendly, or very, very good to use. And then I could focus right in on the eyes. And then if you click back on this 4 times, it will then go back to 1 times. This bit down here, this other one, is just if you're using anamorphic lenses, so you can de-squeeze them. If you had an anamorphic lens on, it would show correct, so that's what that's for. The next one over here is play and pause. I'm going to have to look at what that is. I'm not quite sure at this stage. It might be if you're recording to some of the other recorders or something like that, or if you had 2 of these, you may be able to record on one if you have a hard drive attached or something. I'll have to check that out. This one here is just how you can flip the image up and down, rotate, etc. So that can be handy if you've got the monitor upside down, etc. And the last one that's there is just your rule of thirds that you can see here. So it just depends on whether you'd like rule of thirds on or not.